I'm Lisa Stone. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Parenting Aces. Welcome to the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm Lisa Stone, your host for this week's episode. Before we jump into our regular conversation, though, I want to just wish a big congratulations to all the winners at National Hard Courts last week, and especially to Whitney Oswego, who won the girls 18s, and Jensen Brooksby, who won the boys 18s. For their wild cards into the U.S. Open main draw. That's going to be unbelievable to get to watch. I'm really excited and hope I get to watch their matches live, but if not, I will definitely be following them. Also, I wanted to send a big shout out to everyone who played in last weekend's the Saul Schwartz Save College Tennis All-In Tournament in Baltimore, Maryland. We had 55 amazing junior and college players come together to honor the memory of my good friend Saul Schwartz, who passed away in 2016. And for those of you not familiar with Saul or the story behind our tournament, I would suggest that you go to ParentingAces.com and just type Saul Schwartz in the search box, and you'll see all sorts of articles and podcasts and other things related to Saul, his work, and the tournaments that we now put on to honor his memory. So thank you again to all of you who were there, either playing, supporting the kids, or volunteering, those of you behind the scenes, and especially to our sponsors, for sure, Hollowbird Sports, who we couldn't do it without, and Wilson Tennis, who provides a phenomenal prize package to the winner each year, but also to Dunlop, who provided the balls, to Voss Water, who provided all the bottled water for both events in Atlanta and in Baltimore, and to all of our other sponsors, Match Tennis App, Universal Tennis, who am I forgetting? Universal Tennis Academy, Tennis Trunk, and I know there are several others that I'm missing, and I apologize, but please do check out the Saul UTR on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and you'll get all the details there. All right, now for this week's episode, we are going to be speaking with Kirk Spahn, and Kirk is the mastermind behind Dwight Global, a virtual school that works in conjunction with Dwight Academy in New York. And Kirk is also a former college tennis player. He played at Columbia University and has just some amazing insights into why we need to reconsider virtual education for our kids, especially those who are on the track to reaching the highest level of our sport, but also what is changing in virtual schooling, because many of y'all know my son did virtual school for a year and a half in middle school, and things are just so different now. And it was fascinating to me to hear what Kirk has been doing, what plans he has moving forward, and how virtual school can fit into the educational goals for every kid. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's podcast with Kirk Spahn of Dwight Global. Kirk Spahn, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week.
Very, very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I just want to let the listeners know you are a bit jet lagged. You have been all over the world over the past few weeks, starting with Wimbledon and moving on from there. And actually, interestingly, you and I were talking off air before this. I forgot to mention to you, my brother, who was on the podcast before, was actually at Wimbledon too with my dad. So y'all may have met there and not even known it.
Absolutely. Good, solid family place. Getting ready now. Now we're on the road to the U.S. Open. So
there we go.
Back in the States following the action.
Yeah, for sure. So before we jump into what you're doing now, I would love for you to give our listeners a little bit of information on your background in tennis, starting with how you got started in the game and talking about your junior years, your college years, and on from there.
Sure. Like a lot of people who is a younger sibling out there, I ended up following in the footsteps of my older brother, who would be on court all the time. And by following him to lessons at the age of sort of 4 or 5, I'd pick up the racket and try to copy what he was doing. And lo and behold, his coaches were like, when he would take a water break, said, let's give it a shot. And just got so into it, incredibly passionate about the game. And in my junior years, what was so interesting was the ability to travel throughout the world. I mean, tennis, playing ITFs and juniors was such an amazing experience for me because it exposed me to so many cultures. And, I was playing in Europe, at 14 and 15, those teenage years, being able to go travel with my older brother to India and actually played satellites, which I think are now defunct. But anyone listening that has kids or remembers the satellite tours were awesome. You spent sort of 4 or 5 weeks in different countries, trying to pick up points. And that really, again, just exposed me so much. But the big drawback was school and my education and having that consistent decision to always, how far could you go? Should I go live in an academy? The higher my national ranking got, the more it was sort of that question of college, pros, where is this going? And so I really made a conscious effort to make sure that academics were really important to me. I'd always dreamed of, again, sort of following my brother's footsteps of playing tennis and for an Ivy League school or Stanford. And my brother ended up being the captain of the Ivy League championship Columbia team. And I decided, since I was born and raised in Manhattan, that I wanted to get out of the concrete jungle and go to the woods. So I was recruited to play at Dartmouth and fell in love with the campus, and I just had a great experience playing in juniors and in college.
And so at Dartmouth, you were trying to balance academics and balance your tennis as you had all through the juniors. What were your biggest challenges playing at an Ivy League school?
Well, I think even earlier than in college, I think the big issues for me started really at probably age 15, when I was starting to do much better in the junior tournaments, and they would take me away from school. And I actually went to an all-boys private school that was very, very rigorous, and I was keeping up. But the school started telling me that they were threatening me, that I would, they didn't want me to play nationals and miss school. And that was just, I'd never understood that. I was kind of like, why wouldn't you grasp and want to sort of promote the fact that one of your students is doing very well? As long as I'm keeping up academically and I was excelling, why would you be sort of threatening, and why can't you have some flexibility? And it made me actually end up switching schools and going to a school that my family are educators. And when I was young, I always said, oh, who wants to go to school where their father is kind of the principal? And after talking to him at 15, he said, look, if you come here, the ethos of the Dwight School is that it's about igniting the spark of genius in every child. So if someone does have a passion, we'll help stoke and promote that. So that was a huge game changer for me, because going to a school where people embraced what I was doing, my passion, and treating it really like a job. I mean, academics are very important, but to really, as we all know, listening here, to thrive in the tennis world at any level, it requires so much dedication, so many practice hours, and in non-traditional times. If you start playing tournaments, the need to travel is huge. And so, balancing education and the ability to train and compete was sort of a lifelong enigma that carried on. And when I got to Dartmouth, I was really ready for the academics there, because I had chosen to stay at, an elite private school. But in all honesty, looking back, my rankings and probably my level of tennis did get affected, because I I was able to train a lot, but not to the extent that I think in a current day with the use of technology, we have the ability to allow kids to do today. So, it was challenging doing that, but it did allow, I guess the issue that I always looked at was how can I turn this to my advantage? And I think that I learned from training and playing time management skills, which is so important. I mean, the biggest drawback of the issue of training versus academics is you don't have much free time. I mean, you have to really become a master of your schedule and really utilize the time that you have effectively. And I think that's a great skill to have.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit more about this whole issue of your parents being educators and being involved in the school. I'm curious how that was for you going to a school where, your parents are not just your parents, but they're also kind of your boss, right? As a student and as head of school.
Yeah, there's no question. It was interesting, but the real background of my family are as kind of scholar athletes. My grandfather was a professional basketball player and an educator, and my father was an All-American basketball player. And so sort of the idea of sports and academics were always intermingled, which I think is really unique and great opportunity. And I think it's what makes the Dwight School, where I went to school, where I coached, where I taught, and now where I created a program, such a unique environment because it really does embrace the idea of a scholar athlete and not having to choose one over the other between, fulfilling your athletic dreams with academic dreams. And the more I met students who chose a path, because I come from an era of a great crop of tennis players. I mean, great friends like Monica Seles and Tommy Haas and people that were training at the then Bollettieri Academy, which is now IMG. Later in life, it was always an issue of looking back and thinking, oh, did I miss out? Because education was not really, they didn't really promote the need for a really great education. And I think that today, you really have to have a mixture of great education, academics. So my parents, while they were educators first, they were very supportive of the athletics, having been athletes. And we happen to have a great school. I mean, our high school team in New York City was probably one of the best ever. We had guys like Max Murney, who are still great, one of the greatest doubles players of all time. I think from our high school team, we had about 5 of our 9 or 10 players go on to play D1 tennis in college. So that was really, really unique. It was great experience.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So, I mean, let's segue into what you're doing now. So after college, you did your 4 years at Dartmouth, and what's your degree in?
Yeah, so I was in history with a minor in education, of all things. I was always passionate about education, even from an early age.
And so after college, what did you do?
So I got so into tennis, I couldn't escape it. I had some friends who, because I was training a lot at the Bollettieri Academy when I was still in school. I couldn't go. I had to make a decision early on at like 14 or 15 years old. Should I live at the academy? But then you're giving up your academics. So I stayed in New York, but did a lot of training down in Florida. So some of my peers were doing amazing stuff. I'd mentioned Tommy Haas and guys like Mark Philippoussis and Max Murney. So I went to move and lived in London working at a technology company called Schoolmaster.net, and it was really in the original .com boom. So it exposed me to the potential of what online education could be in the future. And this was now it was 1999. So coming up on 20 years ago, but being able to be exposed to what the future of technology and education was kind of really propelled me going forward, and was able to take those lessons and come back to my family's school. After doing working in different .com industries, I went back to grad school at Columbia University in public affairs and international business and marketing, and founded a nonprofit that was really focused on youth leadership. And that's been a big passion of mine, is really social entrepreneurship, working with kids on character building, because I spent a lot of time and was incredibly inspired by the works of like Dr. Lair, who many tennis families know him. He's an incredible sports kind of psychologist and inspiring mentor to so many players, that my dream was always to blend that, take the athlete's discipline and passion for sports with, the need for a great education, but also to build great character. Because I think at the end of the day, both academics, I think as parents listening and as kids are listening, I mean, the most important thing is not what a ranking is, what college you get into. It's really the character of the individual and building that, self-confidence, self-awareness, and the ability to really take on life. And I think sports, is a great way to promote that with the academics and the inspiring leadership. So that's what's kind of guided me.
That's awesome. And then at what point did you come back to New York?
So I can't believe I'm old now. My chronology gets very, very, very mixed up. I spent a lot of time traveling. I had some just amazing experiences with friends on tour. I mean, everyone from Tommy Haas to Monica to Djokovic, just these amazing wild rides in different countries and going to all the majors. So when I guess I permanently moved back, I think it was 2001 in New York, and I was always involved with the school, whether it be from coaching the high school tennis team, which won state championships, to teaching history and an international baccalaureate course called Theory of Knowledge. I kind of always would come back and always had one hand in the school system. Since it was family run, I sort of wanted to learn from the bottom how the whole education system worked. And so working with my dad and my brother has been just a huge honor and privilege and a lot of fun.
And so at some point you saw the need to expand Dwight's offerings and to do something to help kids who were in the same situation that you had been in growing up, right? In terms of their education and their sport. And so are you the founder of Dwight Global Online School, or how did?
Yeah, it was a huge team effort because, again, having gone back to my family roots of being kind of scholar athletes and knowing that sports and the discipline, the need of flexible scheduling, the academics, that it was always ingrained in what the philosophy of the Dwight School was. I mean, it's kind of written everywhere, which is igniting the spark of genius in every child. And that's not just like a slogan. It's actually a day-to-day. If you come to Dwight, whoever you meet with will sit down and say, okay, what's your spark? What's your passion? What do we want to focus on? What are your strengths? How do we grow your strengths and nullify the weaknesses? And, what's the dream? Because college is not the dream, right? I mean, it's not the end result. It's still a preparation and a step towards what you want to end up doing. And I think that I can't take credit for, it was a huge team effort. It was just, I saw a need to answer the question that I had. I didn't want any students to ever have to make a decision that says, I can't go to a great school, get a great education, and also be a pro tennis player. Because as you know, I mean, it's really the journey. I mean, as a parent, when you're striving, you train to be number one in the world, but there's only, one number within the reason number one for a reason. It's there, but you train to be number one, but wherever you end up is where you're supposed to end up. And the process is what builds character and makes you unique. And so I trained every day to win Wimbledon, but I played at Dartmouth, had a great run, loved playing, and it stuck with me my whole life. So I think that the real inspiration for me came at not having that decision. So I talked to my dad and I said, I've learned all about what online learning can mean. And it originally felt like something, see, people are scared of online learning. I was scared of online learning. To me, it sounded like a robot, like a kid stuck in a room with a computer by themselves or just answering like questions. I'm sort of picturing this area. And I knew that what we wanted to do with Dwight Global was completely unique. I wanted it to be incredibly personal. I wanted real teachers. I wanted a sense of community, but I wanted to make it more that time was precious and how to maximize the efficiency of getting a good education without the need to be there 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because we all realize how much wasted time there is during the school day. Whether your child's a stellar student or, needs extra help or falls somewhere in between, they are going to be spending time during their school day really kind of twiddling their thumbs. Right. And so it's interesting because my son did virtual school for a year and a half in middle school. And it was like you described. It was him alone at a desk with a computer answering questions. And so I am very interested to hear more about how you created something that doesn't promote that type of environment.
Sure. No, I think it's so valid and it's real. It's the same way the internet. We're calling Dwight Global is really online education 2.0, and I don't like to refer to it as online school. It truly, we try to really make it blended, and it really is the way of the future in the sense that, it's always interesting when the requirement that all of a sudden from age, whatever it is, like 5 to 18, you go to school from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., then you play your sports, you have activities, and then all of a sudden you go to college and you may be in class 2-3 days a week.
Right.
Your classes are meeting twice a week for 2 hours. It's like, wait, but I used to have math every day. So What we're trying to do with Dwight Global is, because our students have, by the way, they're not just tennis players. We have professional actors, we have dancers, we have figure skaters. People that are literally having like full-time jobs while going to school because they understand how important education is. So we understand that everyone's time is super valuable. So let's not waste it. Like, let's cut through it. Let's have teachers who, when you learn something and you prove that you know it, move on, and not having a machine move you on, or, just because you answered the question right. And so much of what I call online learning 1.0 is that you're sort of at the pace of a machine. Like, you're doing a lot of, and I'm sure you probably saw it with your son, a lot of busy work. And in theory, the online should be the opposite. There shouldn't be busy work. It should be, all right, let's move on. Let's move at a fast pace. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big difference. It's also much more personalized. Dwight, it's a private school. So, when my father founded Dwight, it had 60 kids and 8,000 square feet. And, part of what I should say going back is that I worked for years at the school opening up international campuses. And we opened up campuses in London and in Seoul and in Shanghai, and Dubai launches this fall. And it just made so much sense to put it all centralized and create, a curriculum in the cloud, because then you could jump around. If you wanted to, go visit Shanghai, go visit Dubai, London, it just unified the world. And I think Dwight was a real innovator in opening those bricks and mortar campuses. And so the natural progression was to have all your teachers and your systems online. And so that really was what was so unique about it, is that you have great teachers really giving personal care. And I think the difference, if I were to say with your son's experience online and the Dwight Global experience, is that instead of feeling isolated in a room, the teachers at Dwight Global actually know the students pretty much better than if they were sitting in front of them in their class, because they understand their time commitments. Whereas when you're at a regular school, they literally, I remember my teacher going, I don't care that you have a
Right.
face right now. Like, what does that mean to me? Like, so what? Like, you're in my domain. Whereas at Dwight Global, like, they know that. They're like, hey, how did it go? Okay, good. Oh, so you're feeling pretty down there. Like the teachers are much more empathetic and aware of every student's unique situation. So I think that alone makes it so much easier. And I kind of think, and again, to the parents out there, to you, that I have this discussion all the time that, great teachers leave such an imprint on students' lives. And I think that there are two different forms of great teachers. I think that one way a teacher can be great is to make a subject that you may not be interested in come alive. And that happened to me with history. I mean, I just happened to have a great, inspiring teacher, and it led me to be a history major. And now I love reading history and traveling more than anything, but it really comes from a great deliverer of information. I think the second aspect, which doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, of a great, great teacher is someone that cares about the student. And I mean really about them as an individual. So they may not be the best deliverer of information, but they're there and the student knows, wow, that teacher has my back. They care. And I think that is what makes our program so special is, and you kind of have to see it to believe it, but the teachers are so involved in the student's life outside of the academics that it is like one big family. And I think that's something that, was always a dream for me to create. And when I hear students say that they love school, I'm like, wait, that just seems, I've never heard that before. And that's really what students say when they're at Dwight. And that's what a lot of students have been saying at Dwight Global. And I don't think as an educator, you can ask for much more than that.
No, absolutely not. So, one of the things that comes to mind as you're talking about the philosophy, the education philosophy behind Dwight Global is the Khan Academy, which was my first exposure to an online learning environment that was individually paced. And once you knew the material, you could move on. And it just, from an outsider looking in, it made so much sense to me that, this whole idea of flipping the classroom and, so did that impact the development of your curriculum at all or your kind of education philosophy at all?
In a lot of ways, yes. And in some ways, no. So I applaud Khan Academy beyond belief. So my whole family believes that if a student is inspired, I mean, by all means, Khan Academy is a great tool. The issue I have with a Khan Academy is that so much onus is on the student to manage their time and to follow through that you don't have that necessary support network. And that's a huge difference, in everything else. There's also an issue of, being a small private school. I think that Khan Academy inspired me sort of in like the yes, we can, like this can be done. It's not so far-fetched to put your curriculums online that students will watch a lecture and then focus more on the conversation. And that's really what, so in a way, did inspire me was that the concepts of flipped classrooms, of utilizing time in an effective manner. I mean, when you and I were in school, it was sitting down, watching, a teacher write notes on the board and lecture, and you scribble down notes, as fast and furious as you can. And then it's like, okay, do the homework, and you're sort of set to do problems at home by yourself in a room. And if you're stuck, and you got to spend 3 hours on a problem, and there's no one there to support you or whatever it is. So I think that's the idea of flipped is so much better, right? It's like, let me learn the lecture at my own point. And then when I have issues, let me use the class time and be with people to hear other opinions, to work through problems, to work on collaboration and teamwork skills. Because in the real world, and even in tennis, which is the most individual sport on planet Earth, there's a reason that Nadal and Roger and everyone, the first thing they do is thank their team. And they really mean it, that you cannot be successful on your own. And there's no such thing. So I think the antiquated way that education was so siloed is so wrong, and it's completely flipped. That learning how to collaborate, learning empathy skills, learning leadership and entrepreneurship, and how to plan and execute and promote projects. Project-based learning is so huge. Creativity. These are all things that are really what makes the jobs of the future, and what are the skill sets that people will need. I mean, great communication skills are critical. So I think to your question about the Khan Academy is that it did open it opened my eyes to what was possible. And then I was able to adapt that and say, wow, here's Dwight, which is so cutting edge. And what makes Dwight unique is that it is an international baccalaureate school. And my father's been on the board of the IB. And I'll do a quick, super fast Cliff Notes version of what the IB is.
Okay.
The International Baccalaureate curriculum is really, the world's most advanced and best high school curriculum. I call it the greatest hits album of the world, because it was founded by a bunch of leading scholars over 30 years ago who were having a discussion. What is the best education system in the world? And some said the Japanese, the American, the French system, the British, because each country's system had their own unique areas of excellence. And the IB tried to capture all of those together, roll them up, and then say, yeah, but does this prepare students for jobs in the 21st century? And this is, again, going back 30 plus years, so 40 years, whatever. So it focuses much more on critical thinking and teamwork and leadership and community action and service, with courses like theory of knowledge. Why do we learn? Well, how does science relate to math? And, again, going back to when I was in school, people said, well, why am I learning this? And now today, it's really the teachers, it's saying why up front and gripping the students, because there's a mantra that we have at Dwight Global, which is inspire, educate, innovate. Because everyone says, oh, we're creating innovators of the future. Well, innovation doesn't come without inspiration. First, you have to be inspired. By the way, the same reason people play tennis. If you don't like the game, don't play it. Right. You have to be inspired to want to dedicate the time. So, and then, it's like inspire, educate, compete, if it were for tennis, because you get inspired. You're like, oh my God, I really want to be great. I want to have Rafa's forehand. I want to move like Fed or Djokovic. And you're like, well, that takes a lot of work, and that's the education. So, you can't be innovative just from being inspired. You have to educate yourself, and that means training. And so that mantra of inspire, educate, innovate is sort of what pervades both the IB curriculum as well as Dwight Global, which is, I think, it sounds so simple, but I think it's actually different than a lot of ways that education had been up to this point.
So can you share with us what a typical week might look like for a Dwight Global high schooler?
Sure. Again, it's taking into account, what's so cool about it is that we actually know what each individual's kind of schedule are like. So if you're, an ITF tennis player, we know that you have to practice. We know that tournament times, things can get crazy when you're at tournaments, because if you win, you may have to play 2 matches a day. You may have to be in flying somewhere. So really, the flexibility is there. So I would tell you up front that at the Dwight School and Dwight Global Online School, no two students in high school have the same schedule, which is pretty unique. Like there is literally no two people have that exact one. So we also believe that college guidance should start, when you enter high school in 9th grade, instead of meeting with a college counselor at in 11th grade. What are your grades? Oh, you should look at these schools. Or, oh, you're a tennis player. Well, where are you getting recruitment letters from, or things like that. So it's really taking it one step ahead. So about a schedule, it is much more similar to, as I mentioned, a college schedule. So you may meet with your teachers for a given class 2 times a week, and you will have deans that are kind of guiding what you do, and you will be responsible for learning the lectures, the material, like a flipped classroom, really to have discussions about the work twice a week with other students. You can also set up one-on-ones with your teachers. So it is closer to a kind of blended, almost fusion model. So again, in the scope and the landscape of like an online school, you have everything from, a self-paced kind of Khan Academy that you do at your time, which is just, synchronous learning, or, synchronous and asynchronous. And we're a combination of both. And that means we have real teachers teaching real classes at real times that you join into. And then we have a lot of work that can be done flexibly at your own pace to kind of blend in. So it's sort of a merger of the two. And then you have really even more, you have the ability to do one-on-ones to catch up, or if you have problems, you can actually meet face-to-face with your teachers. So therefore, each week is a little bit different, but for the most part, each class will have meeting times, two times a week. And then you have regular kind of quizzes and tests, just like a normal school as well.
So when you have a
lot of clubs. Sorry,
say again. Sorry, say that last part again.
Also there are also like a lot of clubs. So it's as much like a real school as you want to make it. So we have some kids who are, let's say, acting on TV shows whose schedules are absolutely nuts and have such limited time. And you have some kids who, play tournaments, but actually can participate in other activities. And we encourage sort of our global students to also meet with, do projects with students from Dwight New York, Dwight London, Dwight Shanghai. I think that's pretty unique as well. So a lot of my big worry about the online education is that you wouldn't have a sense of community.
Right.
And what's been the greatest part for me, I mean, as a help co-creator, founder, whatever you want to call it, seeing kids say that they've made their best friends at an online school is awesome. Like it's so great. I was at graduation this year, I was interviewing some of our graduates, and they were like, when I was in a regular high school, I ended up just being friends with like the people on the volleyball team or the tennis team. And then I come here and my best friend on planet Earth is a Broadway dancer that I never would have met. And it's like things like that. And that's just, I think that's so great. I mean, we had 3 kids going internationally that were all ended up studying in Paris, and they're all completely different. One loves fashion, one was a dancer, one was an actress, and they ended up all kind of in Paris, and they didn't even kind of they had totally different pathways to get there, but they're all going to be like living together.
That's cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's really unique in that sense as well.
So when you say that you encourage the students to meet face to face with the teacher, does that actually mean live and in person, or does that mean via like a Skype meeting, or how does that work?
Sure. So it's all about proximity. So we do encourage slash kind of demand that students spend a couple weeks at one of our campuses, particularly in New York. We have a great orientation week that students get to bond with their teachers, classmates. They get to do activities together, because I'm a huge believer in team building first, and then the year goes much smoother. So our orientation week is awesome. So again, depending on people's schedules, because it is, a school that's based in the cloud, if you're close to a Dwight school, you have the opportunity to come in and meet with teachers face to face at any time. Or, if you're living in Oklahoma and you would set up a one-on-one with your teachers, and it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm almost embarrassed to see the teacher logs that they're talking to students at 2 a.m. their time, but because of time changes, the teachers at our school will wake up at ridiculous hours because they have they're teaching students who are in Asia. They want to accommodate them. I mean, it's awesome to see, and that's the other thing that is just the most special thing, is that I can talk to you all day about the program, but it's really the teachers that are they deserve all the credit. I mean, they're so passionate about what they do, and they're so into helping the students succeed in what they're pursuing, what their spark of genius is, if it's tennis or dancing, as much as they are with keeping them up to date and becoming stronger in their academics. So that holds the highest sort of praise in my book for the program.
What type of requirement is there to be a teacher at Dwight Global? I mean, is it the same type of certification process as a public school?
Well, it's a Dwight methodology. I mean, understand that, I guess for the listeners, it's important to know that, so Dwight has, almost 150-year tradition of academic excellence. And so if parents are judging, a school based on, well, what are your college, guidance results, Dwight is kind of on just, a top level in the whole world. I mean, it's a leading IB school. Kids are going to Ivy Leagues, by the handful every year. So the teachers go through a whole training process and indoctrination. In fact, I'm working today on our teacher orientation. So the idea behind Dwight Global is that it's the same curriculum as if you were attending the prestigious Dwight School in New York. And you have layers and layers of deans and head teachers and heads of department who have all factored into the curriculum. So whoever the teacher is for I taught AP American History. I had to go through, training, and I was given a syllabus and a great teacher who teaches, I've been teaching for 30 years at Dwight, who was actually my teacher. And then you kind of still make it yours, but you have the basis of this education. So a parent would be like, oh, where the teachers come from. Because I know a lot of the other online programs, I mean, you don't really know where the teacher's background is, how are they trained, where are they from. So ours is, it's all part of the Dwight School network.
Got it. And so again, one of the big kind of, negatives about virtual school traditionally has been this whole idea that, it's promoting isolation, and how are these kids going to develop social skills if they're not in a classroom with their peers? And, you've talked about the fact that you guys really promote this whole idea of team building and collaborative projects, et cetera. But the reality is, if a kid, let's say, is on an ITF tennis pathway where they are traveling, nonstop, and on top of that, they don't live in the city with a campus, then how do you promote that? I mean, how do you make sure these kids develop those skills?
I had the same thought when I was starting this, and I remember our first class. I mean, I was so nervous when I brought a bunch of the first class of Dwight Global students, and they were coming in for Carnegie Hall, and they were going to have to be socializing with all these other students who have been in school together for 10 years. And I'd planned all these sub plans and dinners and try to make them feel comfortable, and how am I going to assimilate? I swear I've never seen anything like it. They just walked in the room and they're like, oh, you're in my history class. Oh, hey, you live in China. And I mean, within minutes, kids these days they're connected via text message, via FaceTime. It's crazy to me. I mean, I realized that I was over worrying about everything. I was like, but if they're not in class, the reality is that you're not friends with people at school because you're in the same math class. It's because you share the same interests, the same passion. So I think having students on projects together and FaceTime each other, that offline, what we do is we've created chill out rooms and home rooms, and then they go offline themselves and they're FaceTiming. I mean, there's a student who went from New York into Dwight Global, and came back and told me he made more friends in 1 year at Dwight Global than he had the last 6 years at the regular school. he'd hung out with the same 3 kids. Now he had 30 friends in 10 different countries. And so it's pretty amazing, but we try to go, above and beyond with the socialization, because I'm constantly in touch with, great friends of mine. Paul Goldstein, who's a coach at Stanford, Big Goswami at Columbia. I'm still very affiliated with the Dartmouth team, and everyone says the same thing, that the worry about the socialization, they're more worried about the impact academically and academic socialization, that they're not ready to work in teams. They're not ready to do projects, to understand the work. But I find that, a sport like tennis, you make so many friends. I was just talking to Carl Poling, who is in our program, who just graduated and is a top recruit at Princeton and just ended up winning a couple ATP points this summer, about that. And I said, you're traveling so much at the ITF. And he's like, yeah, but it's so cool. I have like my own fan base. Like all the kids from Dwight Global are asking, how'd you do? Can we watch online? What's going on? So they support each other, and they're not even involved in tennis. So I think that's a really cool thing for tennis players, because when I was in high school, like the tennis team, they were all my best friends. Like I hung out with my guys. And so to be exposed to the differences, to have, the ballerinas and, girl who's on the TV show Blackish, and we have a girl who's the star of the Disney show Girl Meets World now supporting the tennis players, and they're watching her on TV. It's really what you'd love to see happen in a normal school. It's kind of breaking away all the cliques, because they're part of this unique little band of brothers and sisters where everyone knows that everyone's very serious. They're serious about academics, and they're serious about what they're pursuing. So,
right. I think one of the challenges, at least for me, and I won't speak for everybody listening, but I feel like it's kind of a universal challenge right now, is this generation of high school and even current college players have grown up in such a different world than their parents grew up in, and even in a different world than maybe their older siblings grew up in. And, coming to terms with what that means moving forward is really tough. And, I remember, this is such a silly thing, but my son wanted to get his ears pierced in high school. And, I was like, fine. I mean, it's a hole in your ear. If you decide you don't want them, you take it out. Well, my husband, who is an attorney, was like, oh my God, you can't get your ears pierced. You're never going to get a job. And I said to my husband, but don't you understand that the people he's going to be interviewing with when it's time for him to have a job probably also have their ears pierced? Like it's not like, the world is starting to change, and it's true. And I'm seeing it now as, my son is the youngest of 3 kids, but there's a 7.5-year gap between my oldest and my youngest, and they grew up very differently. My oldest, came through high school before the time of iPhones, and my son, of course, had an iPhone throughout school, and that alone made such a difference in how they socialized and interacted with their peers. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm listening to you talk about these relationships that are being formed and nurtured in a chat room or via FaceTime, and thinking, well, you're still not touching and feeling the person, that you're communicating with. But that's the reality of our kids' world right now. And while it's so different from our childhood, it doesn't necessarily make it bad. It's just different. And we're all learning to adapt to that.
And I'm a little bit old school like you, in the sense that we really do encourage, getting together a lot. It's hard because obviously economically, to send kids to Shanghai or Korea or New York or wherever, it's a challenge. But I do think that, coupled with, I think if you have the FaceTime interaction, you have the support. For me, a big part of it is Dwight has a spark of genius, like a leadership course, and it's character building and empathy and learning about each other. And I think that if you build relationships, even from a young age, starting with mutual respect and understanding, that it can foster great relationships, which we're seeing happen. And that's why I think that it doesn't have to be every day that you're physically with the person, but if you're checking in with friends, which they do a lot, and then they can meet up, whether it be in the fall, summer, winter, if they can meet up 3 times a year, that's unbelievable. And I think they can have really long lasting relationships. But I have spoken to a lot of the Ivy League colleges, and there's a lot of concern from the athletic departments about taking students from, I won't mention names, but other sort of online programs that haven't proven college ready. So I think I wanted to touch base quickly on college readiness and what that means, because, that is something that when all is said and done, I feel super strongly about building relationships and character. But again, parents want to know, will my child be ready to excel in college? And a lot of the online platforms out there do not prepare students effectively to thrive in college. So that is always a big thing for us, which is, understanding that by having a college style curriculum, we're preparing students for what college will be like. By having them do collaborative reports, by understanding critical thinking and having kind of Harkness method discussion groups, I think that the discussion groups with teachers are huge and don't happen on other online platforms. And I think college, especially Ivy League and top colleges, really are based around your participation in small, different types of group work. Even in this guy, that's what makes the classes great. I mean, I can speak for myself at Dartmouth that, my seminar classes were pivotal in my life and amazing. And I think that the scary thing for coaches and people, who are looking at students who have just come from a traditional online background is they're not ready to add to that type of discussion a way that they think is important. And I agree with them. I think that college readiness is a huge factor and something we strive, greatly to make sure that students are not prepared for it, but they're going to be leaders in those colleges.
I love that. So if parents want to get more information on Dwight Global, where should they go?
We found a very simple website, dwight.global. So that is easy as you can have. I was like, it's pretty funny. These websites these days, it used to be, when I was first being interviewed, you'd have, HTTP, www. But it's not. You just type in dwight.global and you can find out everything you need. And we keep it pretty most because at the end of the day, we are one of the first private schools in the cloud, and we work closely. Probably our most similar other school would be Stanford Online High School. We have a lot of students that look at both of us, and I think that any questions, or if anyone has any questions at all, they can find me at Spahn at dwight.edu. It's KSPAHN at DWIGHT.edu. Again, or a lot of info is at Dwight Global, and myself and the head of school, we check all the emails come directly to us from the website, so you can be sure to be able to answer any questions you have. And would love to. You can take tours of it both virtually and in person, since there are a lot of Dwight campuses around the world. We're opening up Dubai in a couple weeks.
Very cool. And I'll have those links in the show notes too, so my listeners can just click and get there. And I would be remiss. Oh, go ahead.
I'd say if any listeners wanted to come also, if they're going to be at the U.S. Open and are in the city and want to take a tour of Dwight, we're on 89th and Central Park West, and I will be around both running back and forth between the Open and the school.
Well, that's going to be the opportunity for you and I to meet then, because I will be there, and I'm definitely going to take you up on that offer.
Awesome. And I don't, and they're also, we do leadership speaker series. I should mention also, I don't know if you put this earlier in the podcast, but we have a leadership course. We actually have a lot of tennis players that come in and talk to our kids. So Tommy Haas, Monica Seles, we have guys in the NFL, like skiers like Bodie Miller. We do Dwight Global Leadership Speaker Series that are great, and the kids can ask questions and learn from, people that have been in those situations. So we bring in people who've been on Broadway, actors, things like that, because nothing's better than hearing from people that they look up to, the facts about it, and it gets them re-inspired about school and helps answer questions. So this year we hope to actually, during the Open, get Novak over to the Dwight Global Orientation this year.
Very cool. All right. So I have two questions I have to ask you before we finish up. One is, what is the size of Dwight Global? Because you keep mentioning, that you like to keep it small. What does that mean in real numbers?
So we have about under 100 students at the moment. We sort of want to keep it, we're grades 7 through 12. I mean, the majority of our students are high school. We have some, I think it's, I don't have the exact numbers for this year, but I think it's like 80 students in high school, and about, we have some students that just take certain courses. So we're kind of creeping up to the 100 student number. I think the dream would be to, try to keep it within 200 students, because over that it becomes, we try to really keep it super small classrooms so the teachers really know all their students very well.
Right. And last question, which I know my listeners are going to want to know, is what is the tuition to attend?
So Dwight Global is like a private school. So we're just shy of $30,000, which is on the high end for the virtual school, on the low end for, much cheaper than the kind of one-on-one Fusion academies. We have partners who have offered generous financial aid opportunities as well. So we believe in everyone's spark of genius, but the real differentiator for us is the fact that you have real teachers teaching the real courses all the time. It's their full-time job. So it is a small private school, and we look forward. Again, we believe in spark of genius, so don't let a price tag scare you from applying. We kind of work with, again, great organizations and people who have entrusted us with some great scholarship opportunities as well.
That's fantastic. Well, Kirk, thank you so much for doing the podcast. I learned a ton today, and I'm starting to kind of have a little bit of a mind shift around virtual school, because like I said, my own experience with my child was not great. And
you were in online school 1.0. We're now entering probably we're past 2.0. We're looking at 3.0, but it is. I totally understand, by the way, why it's scary, because I'm one of those as well. I've seen it with my own eyes, how the students have reacted. And again, it's not the experience of other online schools. I mean, the people that we're getting for Dwight Global are coming from other online schools. And I always ask them, well, tell me the difference. I'm like, what do you mean? It's night and day. Mm-hmm. This is a different, so it's almost like there's not another qualification, because we're not like, a Laurel Springs or other ones. We are really a kind of our own entity that's growing. And I think it is kind of 3.0.
I love it. Well, thanks again for coming on. And again, to my listeners, the links that Kirk mentioned will be in the show notes, so be sure and check those out. And this has just been eye-opening. I've loved talking to you, and I look forward to meeting you either in New York or LA or somewhere in between on your travels.
Absolutely. And good luck to all the listeners, and keep training hard, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again.
Thank you. And to my listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces. I'm Lisa Stone, and you've been listening to the Parenting Aces podcast for tennis parents by a tennis parent. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to us and write a review on iTunes. For more information on navigating the junior and college tennis journey, please visit us online at ParentingAces.com. Thanks for tuning in and sharing us with your tennis community.